spot. Officer Knight, on the other hand, communicated to the chief about the situation at hand, after which, he tried to defuse the bomb solely by himself. Unbeknownst to them, the countdown was already drawing closer, and not long after, the bomb exploded right in their faces. They were rushed to the hospital almost immediately, and it was then the doctor unearthed that Knight's head and Greg's body are no good anymore. But then the nurse thought of a really brilliant idea, one which involves sewing the dog's head onto Knight's body. Sarah Hadoff, OK City News reporter, revealed live on TV that the doctors were able to save the popular cop and his dog by creating a dog-human hybrid, now known as Dogman. Dogman was loved by the citizens, and he also solved crime diligently, as reported by Sarah, who described him as the Dogman super cop. The chief wasn't in tune with the fact that Dogman gets to be on the front page and not him. He pleaded with her to write him one good story for the sake of his mom, but she wasn't still conforming to his shenanigans, so he walked her out of his office. Dogman eventually got to his home, but on getting in, he was met with a great tragedy. His whole house was empty, and Alice, whom he loved so much to the core, had dumped him because of his current nature. It was such a depressing moment for him, as he relived all the wonderful memories they had here. Really disheartening. To make the whole situation a lot much worse, the house saleswoman revealed to him that she'll be moving in with her new boyfriend and his pet dog shortly, and this broke his spirit. Nevertheless, his co-cop picked him up a few minutes later, and she tried her best to console him, but in an extremely hilarious way. Petey was utterly aggravated, as his plan to annihilate the renowned cop resulted in the creation of a super cop. He thought to himself Dogman needs to be taken down as soon as possible, so to achieve this feat, he coined up another idea. Dogman was immensely loved by the citizens, but this annoyed the chief to the core, as he wanted to be the one on the spotlight. The chief made it clear to Dogman that he's the boss around here, then he told him about Petey, who was on the loose yet again. He was all in his feelings as the situations were just too much to handle, but the hybrid gave him comfort. The next day, Petey attacked the city with a giant vacuum cleaner, so Dogman used his intuition and led him towards the ocean. Due to the intensity of the water, Petey almost drowned, but Dogman saved his life, thereby capturing him and taking him straight to cat jail. With the help of a fellow inmate, Petey was able to escape without hassle, and it was brought to the chief's notice. Petey tried his best to get rid of Dogman with different inventions, but each time he tried, he ended up being captured and imminently sent back to jail. Dogman became more and more popular as this menace went on, as he was showered with fascinating love. The mayor of the city bursted into the chief's office, insisting she wants Dogman off the Petey case, as she was fed up with him escaping each time he gets sent to jail. The chief tried to explain to her that it's not fair, as Dogman is the champ of capturing Petey, but she didn't care about what they had to say, and insisted he gets taken off the case with immediate effect. Dogman left the station wallowed in agony, as the chief told him sadly that he has been taken off the case. He wandered in his lonesome through the city, then he took shelter at a doghouse situated in the far ends of the city. He mourned immensely with sad songs playing in the background, but regardless, he sucked it all in and went to bed. Petey was relentless and inexorable with his evil schemes, as he returned to his lab to devise another plan. Petey felt if he's to truly defeat Dogman, then he needs someone who acts and thinks just like him, and it was at this moment he thought of a great idea, one which involves purchasing a cloning machine. The next day, the chief called Dogman insisting he has another job for him. On hearing this, he scurrily got to the station on short notice. The chief delved right into business by giving him his new job of guarding the dead Villian fish, Flippy, which was to be used to further a science experiment at the Super Awesome Science Center. On the local news, the scientist in charge of the experiment ignorantly gave out the exact process to rebuild Fishy, the psychokinetic evil villainous fish, and this gave Petey a brilliant idea, which he referred to as his next plan to take down Dogman. The chief briefed Dogman on his new job, which just simply entails he keeps his eyes peeled on the monitor looking out for intruders, but unbeknownst to them, Petey had already broken in and stolen the fish. On getting the hang of this, Dogman initiated the alarm, after which he went in immediate pursuit of Petey, using a drone to navigate his way in the air. His pursuit was cut short as he got distracted by a squirrel which diverted his attention, making him crash atop a billboard. Dogman went straight to the station to report what had happened, but he ended up getting scolded by the chief, who was vastly disappointed. Petey retrieved Flippy's drive, and was very excited on discovering his evil level is maxed up. Then he proceeded to input new command in the drive, stating his sole mission on his resurrection is to obliterate Dogman, and on short notice, his cloning machine arrived also. The chief figured the perpetrator was Petey through the surveillance footage Dogman brought, so due to the fact that no other officers were around, he entrusted him with the mission. On spur of moment, Petey activated the rigorous process of cloning himself, but he was disappointed on the results as it was cute and small, and it was then he realized he didn't read the complete instructions. Lil Pete referred to him as Papa, but Petey wasn't having it, which led the little clone to cry unceasingly, and Petey was utterly frustrated, craving for his old life back. Petey tried to explain to Lil Pete that he's his clone, so evil should run through his veins, but the clone wasn't getting the memo, so he decided to take him on an expedition to resurrect Flippy, but Lil Pete messed the whole process up, making the evil fish to get stuck in the wrong pipe. To avoid the mayor finding out his intention to initiate Dogman on the mission, he made use of a secret passage in his drawer to lead Dogman out of the station without attracting attention. Petey tried to sell Lil Pete off to a little girl, but she ended up abandoning him when he innocently offends her. Not long after, he lost sight of the clone, so he happily utilized this opportunity to run off, not caring about Lil Pete's whereabouts. Lil Pete eventually came back, but he was aggrieved on coming to the realization that he had been relinquished. Very sad indeed. Lil Pete carted his box throughout the city, clinging on to the hope that it was a mistake, and it was at this moment Dogman sighted the little innocent cat. In show of compassion, Dogman ditched his initial mission, just to save Lil Pete from being rammed by a hefty truck. Dogman wasn't about to leave him all by himself on the roadside, so he adopted him, giving him shelter at his doghouse. They both slept together in harmony, and the clone was immensely pleased to have someone he could refer to as family. Petey, on the other hand, was about to go over his plans on destroying Dogman, but then he found a book written by Lil Pete in his lair, but after reading it, he squelched and threw it away in the trash. Dogman and Lil Pete were having the time of their lives, as they happily coexisted in happiness, complementing each other's actions. Touching story indeed. Dogman was so happy with his new life, that he totally forsaked his mission of going after Petey. Butler showed him a picture of Dogman and Lil Pete having fun together, and this infuriated him greatly, as he couldn't conceive the idea of his clone living in harmony with his archenemy and rival. Petey, with the help of his new bot, retrieved Lil Pete from Dogman's house. Then he told him of his new special plan to obliterate Dogman. Petey was utterly frustrated by Lil Pete's relentless persuasions, so to put him in line, he told him a story of how his own father abused him when he was young. On hearing this sad story, Lil Pete suggested they go find his papa, with the hopes he's now a changed man. Dogman woke up in the middle of the night, only to discover Lil Pete was nowhere to be found, so he scoured through the whole house in search of him, but all to no avail. Lil Pete unearthed Petey found it hard to be happy, so he tasked the ADHD bot to find his grandpa, and bring him back to the secret lab. Dogman was all in his feelings as he couldn't ascertain the whereabouts of his sidekick, so he related his grievances to Sarah the reporter. On hearing this, Sarah proclaimed Lil Pete missing on the local news, after which they ransacked the city together in search of him. After a long while of searching, they couldn't find any single trace of him, so Sarah beckoned to help find him through the local news. As this was happening, the ADHD robot delivered Grandpa as instructed, to the secret lair. Petey was in awe meeting his dad after years of not hearing from each other. Grandpa remained indifferent as he has always been, which left Petey infuriated at Lil Pete for bringing him back. But then he figured he abandoned Lil Pete just how his father abandoned him, and this left him stricken with remorse. The scientists were able to retrieve Flippy from the pipe, but as they were playing around with it, they mistakenly resurrected the villainous fish, and Flippy was brought back to life, accompanied by the living spray factory, his evil sidekick. Petey was all in his feelings as he heard Lil Pete say he loves him, because he didn't feel he was capable of being loved, and this made him rethink his actions so far, so he left, insisting there's something urgent he gotta do. Dogman was lost in thoughts as all efforts to find Lil Pete proved abortive, so Sarah laid down and sympathized with him, giving him encouraging words of hope. Brewed with a renewed spirit, it was a final showdown between Petey and Dogman. Dogman evaded all his attacks, then he got caught in Petey's evil mobile, while Flippy was laying waste to OK City. Petey eventually rammed the mobile to a bridge of explosives, after which, Dogman was eventually able to capture the villainous cat. But then Lil Pete arrived at the scene questioning what Dogman was doing with his pops, and it was then he coined it together that they're related by blood. It was a tough choice for Dogman as he was to decide whether to take Petey to jail, or release him for Lil Pete's sake. As this was happening, Flippy imminently arrived at the crime scene, but instead of his initial setup to destroy Dogman, there was a glitch and he captured Lil Pete in his stead. On spur of moment, Petey convinced Dogman it's best they join forces together, so as to go after Flippy and save Lil Pete. Dogman was reluctant as first, but he eventually accepted the proposed alliance for the meantime. What a plot twist. Petey thought of a great idea to bring down the giant building, so he told Dogman to come along. Flippy, with his power of telekinesis, was about to throw Lil Pete off the roof, but he decided to give his loved ones a little time to see if they'll come for him. Petey and Dogman arrived in style on board a mecha giant robot, and with it, they engaged Flippy's sidekick in a worthy battle of the ages. They fought gruesomely for quite a while, and after much effort, they fiercely slammed it on the ground. The mecha robot was able to break the telekinesis connection between Lil Pete and Flippy, then he ran for his life. Unbeknownst to them, Flippy's sidekick released a poisonous gas that corrupted other buildings around, and they proceeded to rampage the whole city. While all this was happening, the police chief professed his love for Sarah on live TV, then he proceeded to evacuate the entirety of the city. Petey and Dogman weren't about to give up easily, so they staged an attack on the buildings using the mecha robot, but they ended up defeated. Lil Pete rushed to inform Grandpa of the danger at hand, but as he didn't pay attention, he took control of the ADHD robot and headed out. Petey, seemingly viewing the situation as end time and irredeemable, apologized to Dogman for all the trouble he has caused, and they eventually made peace with each other. One of the buildings smashed the mecha robot to pieces, but the people inside were fortunate enough to escape, following Dogman's lead. The building was about to finish them off, but Lil Pete came to their rescue. They jointly retrieved Lil Pete from the robot, but then Flippy decided to end it all by himself. Petey for the first time did a selfless act, by leaving his son in Dogman's care, while he stalls the evil fish. Dogman and the rest of the crew hid in a shop, while Flippy carted Petey away into abyss unknown. He planned on dumping Petey into an active volcano, but then Lil Pete composed a touching story for Flippy. Lil Pete, accompanied by Dogman, chased after Flippy, who was already getting close to the volcano, and as he was about to dump him inside, Lil Pete innocently confronted him. It was at this moment Flippy revealed his momentarily shift to evil was because no one liked him, and even his fellow fishes makes jest of him. To cheer Flippy up and convince him that he now has a friend, Lil Pete read him the book he composed for him, and after reading it, Flippy burst into tears, and it was then his evil powers faded. Petey was about to fall into the volcano as he was no longer bound by Flippy's telekinesis, but Dogman used a launcher to knock him out of harm's way, and he rolled down the volcano safely. The police chief afterwards scurried to arraign Flippy for all the crimes he had committed. The chief also told Dogman to arrest Petey, but the mayor rushed outside, insisting the governor saw the whole event unfold, and has decided to grant Petey a state pardon. Petey couldn't withstand himself being good, so he left with Lil Pete, but on getting to his secret lab, he unearthed Grandpa has cleared all his stuffs. Petey then got a mail with the option to undo Lil Pete, but he trashed it down the sewers. Petey eventually decided to rekindle with Dogman, and this made him extremely happy. The whole city came together to celebrate their reunion, and that was how the movie ended. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment.